Hi there and welcome. We're going to take a short break from studying material imbalances today because I'd like to talk to you about tournament preparation. Occasionally I'll throw in topics like this just to keep you on your toes. And also the reason that I'm throwing this in today is because I'm about to play in a tournament, so I thought it was an appropriate time to talk about tournament preparation, which is an important subject. First of all, I like to say that if you get the opportunity to play in tournaments, you should play. Practice makes perfect, like everything else. So it applies to chess, so if you have the opportunity, practice. Even if you're a bit worried it might be quite challenging, if you're not sure you're ready, or perhaps the other way around, you think you're too strong for the tournament, I would recommend playing. I think it's better to get some practice than no practice at all. I wasn't a member of a club for a while because there wasn't a strong club around, and this was detrimental to my standard of play when I wasn't playing regularly. You've got to sort of be match fit. So take the opportunity to play. If you're not a member of a club, join a club. I'm sure you can find one nearby. It will certainly help your standard of play if you're playing regularly. One thing about tournaments though, and playing at the club, be wary of blitz chess. I've mentioned it before, but I want to mention it again. A good process that is automated becomes a better process, but a bad process that is automated becomes worse. So it's sort of similar with chess. If we're playing blitz and our sort of mind process has become automated, we have to because we haven't got enough time to think. So if we've got good processes, they sort of act well, but if we've got bad ones, they act worse under time pressure. So until you're really comfortable with the formula and applying the technique, I would say be a bit wary of playing too many blitz games. Okay, back to tournament preparation, and I would recommend that before you actually play a tournament game or any serious game, there's a lot that you can do before you sit down at the board. For example, you don't want to turn up at the board and your opponent play d4 against you and then you start thinking because you haven't prepared an opening against d4. Or similarly, if he plays e4, you start thinking because you haven't prepared an opening against e4. As black, you should at least have openings prepared against e4 and d4. And you should have some idea against c4 and knight f3, which are the other two main possibilities. You should know what you're going to do. You should have a core opening that you will play against each of these. Also, with white, you should decide whether you're going to play d4 or e4, maybe c4. But you should choose your primary opening move, and if it's d4, for example, you should be prepared to meet d5, so perhaps a Queen's Gambit. Then you have to be prepared to meet the normal decline Queen's Gambit, the Queen's Gambit accepted, or the Slav variation. You would need to be prepared to meet knight f6, which could lead to perhaps c4 is the main move you would play. Could lead to the Nimzo Indian after e6, or the Queen's Indian in some circumstances. The King's Indian. It could lead to a Benoni type structure after c5 and d5, including the Benko Gambit. So you would need to be prepared, have an idea of what you would play against each of these possible replies from your opponent. So do this. Have a rough idea at least before you start playing in a tournament. You don't want to be sitting down at the board and then thinking what you're going to do in the opening. You want to have a rough idea before you sit down. Now, the exercise we did at the beginning in getting started should have helped you, and we will be going back into more detail about this later on. Okay, good. Now, when you are playing, when you're in the tournament, when you're playing your games, chess is quite requires stamina. You use a lot of energy. Your brain uses a lot of sugar, a lot of glucose while you're playing. So you need to make sure those levels are kept high. Fischer used to imbibe apple juice while he was playing, and many players use chocolate. I think it was Gufeld who said that a brain without sugar is no brain at all. Kasparov was fond of the German brand of chocolate Milka. You could always see Milka at his board side while he was playing. And I myself, I like dark chocolate. But whatever it is, make sure you've got something which can keep your levels of energy high. for me, and I've seen it with other players as well, you play a really good game and then deep into the game, 2 to 3 hours into the game, getting a bit tired, mistakes start creeping in because of fatigue. So we can eliminate this by getting some good rest before the game, so our energy levels are at the max, not worrying too much about it. So you don't want to be preparing opening half an hour before the game. You want to be doing nothing half an hour before the game, having a light lunch or whatever, and have a piece of chocolate or whatever it is to keep your energy levels up during the game. Okay, hope those tips are useful. I've certainly found them useful, and I know some other of my students have found them very helpful. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at our second complete game, where the main theme again is material imbalance. It's a nice game, I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you then.